Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast, where we're going to move on to talk about the IPL. We've had some big moves. Hardik on the way, Cam Green on the move, Harry Brook dropped. We'll be covering all that I think we'll start with the big story, Ross, and that is Hardik, the ex-captain now of the Gujarat Titans, who has made a triumphant return to the Mumbai Indians. Eyebrows raised all round, I think, on that one. It seems pretty bizarre. Can you briefly explain, for maybe people who are, fairly new to the IPL, what's going on at the moment and why that in particular is interesting?
So Gujarat Titans have played in the IPL for 2 seasons. They've won it once with Hardik at the helm as captain, and then they were runners-up this year, losing out to kind of some CSK magic at the end from Ravi Jadeja. They've then decided that, and Hardik is a real commodity, right? He's a fantastic batter, and he can bowl at like 90 licks, so it's pretty good. And in the domestic talent pool, there's no one near him, right? The next person is Shardul Thakur, and that kind of says all you want. And then it's probably Vijay Shankar. So that's the drop off in quality, right? It's such a rare thing to have. And because there's an overseas player limit, you want the best domestic talent you possibly could have. And Gujarat had that. They genuinely had an astounding person. Mumbai Indians are run by the Ambanis. They are owned by the Ambanis, and they pretty much own world cricket. It's kind of how it seems. So all like MI New York, My Cape Town, all this kind of stuff. They're a big dog franchise, right? A franchise owner, and they've won the IPL. Was it 6 times? I think they've won it. And there's always been bits around the IPL that sometimes it's a bit fixed. It always benefits certain teams here and there, and Mumbai Indians are always part of that conversation. Here, because there are because of the auction, there's not normally player transfers like you get in football. It's not like you sell someone for like £40 million. But the interesting part on this one is that you don't really benefit that much from it from an auction perspective. And Dan can probably talk about that in a bit more detail than I can. But ultimately, on this occasion, Gujarat have given away one of the best players they possibly could have to Mumbai Indians, who have got like a star-studded lineup at the best of times. They've got, I think, is it 15 crore like in their purse because of it, which is it's a hefty amount, but it's not kind of life-changing, right? That's buying you almost Ishan Kishan, which is not really what you want, right? And the owners have got a big chunk of change from the Ambanis, is my understanding of how this has worked. And Hardik Pandya, whatever transfer fee has happened outside of that 15 crore, which is undisclosed, so it could be multi-millions, it could be magic beans, we don't know. But Hardik Pandya gets half of the magic beans, and the Gujarat owners get the other half of the magic beans. 1, this is bad for Gujarat, like really quite bad. 2, this is bad for the IPL in terms of the image of it anyway. And 3, the IPL owners don't give a shit, especially Mumbai Indians. They don't give a shit. I think that kind of sums up some of it, but probably not the whole story.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I mean, like it's quite hard to fully explain what's happened here because it's so unusual. And I think we have to remember as well that the IPL is still kind of in its infancy, if you like, as a sports league. Like, we've had expansion franchises added a couple of years ago. We probably expect more to be added at some point. And I think it's probably fair to say that the structures that surround the tournament, as a result of its infancy, are not particularly rigorous. That there aren't necessarily great precedents set on a lot of how these player transfers work. And I think it's probably also fair to say, as you were sort of touching on there, Ross, that Mumbai Indians ownership have massively exploited the relatively loose regulation.
Harry Redknapp with his arm against the window was signing Nico Cranshaw and Jermaine Defoe again.
They've exploited something here to pull off what is like a major coup for them, and then at the same time shipped out Cameron Green to Royal Challengers Bangalore for some reason. Nobody can fully explain that either, I don't
Probably
think.
chucked him a bum to take that as well.
Yeah, Dan, to try and explain this from a cricket point of view, can you give us some insight into what they might have been thinking when they agreed to give up maybe the most valuable asset in the tournament for effectively peanuts?
It's a struggle to make sense of what they're thinking at all. I don't understand it. There's literally very little in the way of logical sense that can be made of Gujarat's decision here. Because, okay, let's go through a few facts to start with. Now, according to sources on the internet, their purchase price of the team was around $700 million several years ago, right? And I don't know where that would rank in terms of the value of football teams, but I would imagine that a $700 million football team in the Premier League, for example, would be selling their star player for 30, 40, 50 million. Like easily, maybe like a Brighton or something like that, sold Caicedo for way more than that. Yet the figures that people are talking about are like 15 to 25 crore, which is chicken feed compared to the outlay of a franchise. And that's a pittance. So I don't understand why that would be an attractive proposition for the Gujarat owners to take in that situation. I mean, you stick a naught on that, and it's probably still underpriced in terms of the value that they're losing. So yeah, that's tough to see to start with. And I don't understand why Gujarat would then be so sort of willing to fall over and let a rival team, a strong rival team, obviously Mumbai haven't done quite as well in recent years as they had in perhaps the last auction cycle, but still a major rival, a team with a lot of pulling power, a team who would threaten at the top of the table, generally speaking. Why would you do that? Why would you make your team stronger? It just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So, give an example. I actually think of this back in the day. Ross, this might be a little bit too early for you as your Spurs fan journey, but I grew up, and probably I struggle to think of the exact time it would be, but probably be late 90s, early 2000s. Teddy Sheringham was sold by Tottenham to Manchester United for £2 million. Right? Now, Teddy Sheringham was, in my view, at that point in time, the greatest footballer I've ever seen play football at Tottenham Hotspur, and was an absolute icon. Then Tottenham then bought Les Ferdinand for £6 million, who is the same age as Teddy Sheringham, and not as good. So that's basically equivalent. So Tottenham made Man United stronger and weakened themselves, and paid £4 million net loss into the bargain. It makes no sense whatsoever. So yeah, I mean, look, I just don't understand. Obviously, that was pre-Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy would never have sanctioned such a deal. But yeah, it just makes no sense. And I think it shows how much the cricket franchise league world has to learn in terms of player trading and the transfer market in general, and how much it's got to evolve in the future for it to get anywhere near football or some of the American sports models, basically. And I also think that the whole situation it offers more questions than it actually answers. So obviously we don't know how much Mumbai are paying Gujarat in terms of the transfer fee. Gujarat then don't get the extra money in the auction from what
it's irrelevant, right? It's ultimately irrelevant.
A transfer fee just disappears into the ether. It's a meaningless
it just goes into someone's pocket.
That's what it is.
Yeah, well, it doesn't strengthen the team, and I think that's the key point here.
Yeah,
and it's no different, really.
It leaves. Well, it's outside the tournament, isn't it? It's outside the spectrum of the IPL.
It's not like in football where like Tottenham sell Harry Kane for 100 million and then they can buy more players. It doesn't work like that in cricket, generally speaking. No. So they don't get to reinvest that money into their squad. It's no different, really, to a team buying a player for commercial purposes. All that does is just put money into the owner's pockets. It doesn't improve the team in any way, shape, or form. Now, the questions it actually can go down into a pretty deep rabbit hole, I think, at this point, because if we're saying that a team can offer another team an undisclosed fee for one of their players, and the player gets half of this undisclosed fee, what is stopping a team saying to a player who's got like on a 20 lot contract or something like that. You know, someone who's grossly underpriced at the moment, but because their stock was low when they were bought at auction and now their stock has risen, maybe young superstar. What's stopping a team from saying to that player or that franchise that he's representing, here we go, here's X million dollars to this player, but we're going to get you for 20 lakh on our roster, but the player then gets half of that money. So actually, it's win-win for the player and win-win for the franchise who's buying that player, who's richest. I just don't understand how that situation is allowed to manifest itself, really, in terms of the rule book. And I think that's definitely something that needs to be clarified a little bit and perhaps tightened up a bit moving forward.
Yeah, that's
just
a good point. I hadn't really thought about
Max,
that.
hold on, just as a reference, a crore is about $100,000 US. So when we're talking about a crore, I think someone mentioned what the transfer fee might be. We're looking at 1.5 to 2.5 million US, which is not that much for the most valuable player in the tournament. Max, carry on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean that whole wages point is a really good a good thing to bring up. It's I know what a big fan you are of rugby, Jack, but it smacks to me of the whole thing with Saracens, and there's a big issue in rugby union where basically players just get paid outside of the structures of what rugby allow to mean they stay within the salary cap, and that's sort of the exact kind of thing that you're describing that could happen off the back of it if it's not kept in check. So it's an interesting one to look out for. The only there's no logic, is there? There's no cricketing logic to.
I'd be fuming if I was any other franchise. I'd be absolutely livid.
It's ridiculous. But we can always hope. Maybe in a year's time we'll see a beanstalk has just grown in Ahmedabad, and maybe they can send someone up to.
It's already grown. It's called the Modi Dome, mate. It's literally already done it.
They could perhaps encourage some sort of giant humanoid down to fill Hardik's place, and maybe then it looks like a reasonable deal. There's a bit I can think of.
There is a bit for me that I'm kind of hoping, and I don't mean this badly for Hardik as a person, but there's a part of me that Gujarat know he's crocked and he'll never be able to bowl again or something like that, and they're literally just getting something out of it because but even then, there's no angle I can get into my head why Gujarat did this.
Yeah,
no,
there maybe there was a player thing. Maybe Hardik said he wanted to leave.
Yeah, but then you trade him, don't you?
He's going to an auction.
Yeah, go make them pay two.
How much is Hardik going to get in a mini auction? 20 crore? He'd break a record.
Yeah, it would. I reckon he'd go for 25 crore. I reckon a team would just go all out and then just buy a bunch of lack players.
It's definitely possible.
That is, as you were sort of saying there, the only angle I can see is that maybe they know that the BCCI won't let him bowl at the next IPL because the World Cup straight after, and they want to clear some money off their books that way. But then, as you say, the way to do that is to do it properly and either release him into a rival, or trade him and take Tilak Varma or something like that. At least get a player. That will go into your starting lineup out of it. But I mean, you've gifted the best all-round talent in the tournament, who is a domestic player, to a rival franchise who will use him to replace a less good domestic overseas all-rounder who will pay less for that transfer. I mean, I'm talking about Cam Green here, who's moved on.
I was about to move on to RCB. I was about to move on to the enablers.
And they've got nothing really in return. I mean, it's strange. I mean,
the flip side for Mumbai is that it's unbelievable business.
Oh, it's the greatest trade of all time if you're Mumbai. It is unbelievable. You've replaced Cameron Green with Hardik Pandya and saved 3 crore in the process.
It's mind-boggling.
You can buy another player,
RCB
get a
doing?
bowler.
Can someone explain to me what RCB are doing? Like in all of this, and all of the bit, like Gujarat, stupid. Mumbai, clearly, literally just let's pull the wool over these new boys' eyes, kind of thing. RCB should know better. They should know better, but it's so not surprising, is it? Like RCB, like literally paying so much money for like Cam Green, good player. He is a good player. If he goes back into the auction, would he go for what was it? 19 crore he went for last time.
17 and a half. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So quite possibly he's getting up that space, but take the risk. You're already putting Hasaranga back in. You're already putting Harshal Patel back in because you think their whole strategy is we think we could buy these guys back cheaper at the auction, and then they just go, but not Cam Green, and I just doesn't. And they're just like, oh yeah, I think Andy Flower came out and said, yeah, no, he's gonna bat 5, and it's just like, oh, okay, great. So they've got a plan, but they could have done it better, and it has enabled again their behaviour. And I'm sure one of the other franchises might have done it. But I tell you what, the Ambani's first phone call was definitely to RCB because they knew RCB would do something fucking stupid. And it has enabled this behaviour to happen. And RCB fans should be, look, you've got a decent player, but I think you've overpaid and you've enabled more shitty behaviour from other teams and made the other team, in Mumbai Indians' case, stronger.
I think it's the price that's the issue. Because actually, as a player for RCB and what they sort of struggled with last year, it kind of works. I mean, some of the issues they've had have been, well, basically the second half of a T20 match. The best team in the IPL last year in the power play with the bat and the ball, and they're the worst team in the IPL in the death with the bat and the ball. And part of that is because they basically just, after 5, they just ran out of batting. So getting Cam Green in there kind of helps, gives them an extra option with the ball, but it doesn't solve the exact issue at the death that they had. So paying the amount they are just makes no sense. If he has been working basically without sleeping on his death bowling, is now the best death bowler in the world, then it's probably worth 17.5 crore.
He got dropped from the Australia
as
side.
It is now, it's insane. Like the amount of money that's going into it is completely insane. Like the player himself kind of works. It's not that bad from that point of view, but then you just you think about the money that's being plowed into it. It's bonkers. What are you doing?
I just don't get it.
I don't think he can bowl at home, and that's a problem.
I
think his bowling is not good enough to bowl at Bangalore.
I don't perceive Cameron Green to be a better than average bowler at IPL level.
Not yet, anyway.
That is, not yet. He might be, but we don't know that. And
that's not what you pay 17.5 crore for.
And are they going to retain him? Right? It's a mini auction, mega auction the year after. Are they planning on retaining Green in that lineup? Is he really the best overseas player they can?
You would think the RCB would have learned from their mistakes, because all they've done over the years is spend absolute fortunes on 3 or 4 players, and then just had. I think you coined the phrase. I love it. It's a load of guys who just come on the bus, basically, and that's kind of how.
To be fair, Dan, it has led to them winning an awful lot of IPL championships, hasn't it? So maybe the joke's on us.
but no, in all seriousness, I mean, look at their bowling. Their current bowling roster is. Oh my! They're going to have to score about 230 in every game to have a chance of winning.
Siraj has got a lot of weight resting on his shoulders, isn't he?
He's doing the heavy lifting in that squad. Don't worry about that. Yeah, absolutely.
I was wondering whether Mo Bobat's come in and just has a real aversion to the letter H in what he's done with the bowling lineup.
Well, maybe he's trying to model it on this sort of the England side, which is very batting strong. I've got no idea at all. I don't know. Again, similarly to Gujral, I don't know what they're thinking. Like, it's so difficult to even ascertain any thought process in this at all, whereby not only are you taking a player for an overseas player for over 2 crore more than the best domestic player in that skill set, but also you're facilitating your rivals to actually have an auction purse. Because I read an article, I think it was on Quick Info, but I'm not 100% sure. And it said that the Mumbai, in terms of deadline day drama, maybe Jim White was currently sitting in Bangalore waiting for this news to break. I don't know, but apparently Mumbai didn't get this trade deal done in time for the retention deadline, so they had to retain him and then Green and then sell him afterwards, basically. if everyone had just said no, they would have gone into the auction with about 25 lakh, I think it was, needing 8 players. Yeah, like, you would have. I mean, why are these teams just facilitating their? They're just kind of rolling over and saying, "Okay,
It's being a dickhead, isn't it? It's business. At the end of the day, sometimes you just
100%.
have to be a dickhead. Literally, you're not playing with your children, right? You're not letting your daughter or your son win a game, right? That is not how all the IPL works. This is big time adult games that are being played, and they are just acting like they're playing a game of Monopoly with their kids, and I just don't understand it.
It makes me think that these people really who are running the teams, or the people who are making the ultimate decisions, they don't really have a great grasp of game theory at all. They do not understand the implications of their decisions whatsoever.
Yeah, but which is surprising, right? Because you've got these people in, like, you don't own a franchise because you're an idiot, right? Ultimately, you've made an awful lot of money. You're quite successful people. Normally, you're normally hiring people who kind of know what you're doing, unless you're Sunrisers Hyderabad, and you're kind of in a position where you kind of go, like, everybody else can see what's going on. Everybody else knows it's right. They got Kedar Yadav in as a replacement player last year. You know, there's some idiots kind of in the thing. Like, don't enable them. And they got rid of Hessen. And they brought in Andy Flower, and Andy Flower's kind of gone, nope, this is what we're going to go and do. And they've, like, sometimes it's backing your man, but there's also sometimes you're just like, well, let's see what we can do at the auction strategy, and let's just take a breath. They would have had 40 crore to play with in the mini auction,
and there's actually quite a lot in the auction as well.
But also, if they, to my head, they must have known they were going to go in for Cam Green, right? And they would have released some of those players. I think that they could have retained 1 or 2 of their players and been in a better position. They're going to have to go. They're doing major surgery on this team.
I would rather have Hasaranga and Harshal Patel than one Cam Green.
I would.
Yeah. I'd probably agree. Anything else from the auction? We're going to do a proper show on this where we'll go through each team and, talk about what they need, how they shape up before the auction itself, which is in.
Do we want to do anything on Avesh Khan, Devdutt Padikkal?
Yes, that would be
anything
good.
You want. Go on.
Yeah, go on, Dan. Okay, fine. So Devdutt Padikkal, one of the Indian opening batsmen, pretty much was retained by Rajasthan Royals last year. Quite surprising, we thought, on the podcast, because they already had kind of the opening spots filled by Jaiswal and Josh Buttler, and he was a bit of a hanger-on. Dan, I think it was you and I talking before, saying actually he's probably quite a good asset to trade for up, right? You're going to get a better player in return. Avesh Khan struggled last year. I think it was fair to say. The pitches he was playing on were absolutely dog shit at Lucknow. It wasn't really suiting him, from what I can recall. I think this is a trade that actually benefits Rajasthan Royals. I'm not sure how much it benefits Lucknow, but Devdutt Padikkal's a decent enough player. Well, I don't think he's going to set the world alight in T20 cricket, but I think Rajasthan Royals have got the better of this deal, as they needed a pacer, domestic pacer. They've now got 15 pacers or something like that, but I think he's an upgrade on what they had. Am I crazy? Am I seeing my team through pink glasses?
I think you're right. I think actually it's a deal that suits everybody. To be honest with you, I think Rajasthan get Avesh Khan, who had a really decent pedigree prior to perhaps last season, and picking a kind of premium domestic pacer, adding one of those to your roster at the expense of a rival team, can never really be a bad thing, because this, as well as sort of genuine all-rounders, they're part of the scarcest resources that you can get, premium domestic pacer. And then you could say that Rajasthan easing Devdutt Padikkal off their books as well frees up that opportunity to do that. And I think he was a square peg in a round hole at that franchise in terms of I don't know what they were thinking really with that recruitment, because it's almost like they've just looked at the player rather than the actual role that he's going to play in their side. He's not. So I don't think he's in any way, shape, or form like a number 4 batter at all. And I think that this move gives him the potential ability to get back to the player that I think a lot of people expected him to be by this point of his career. And I think also it helps it helps Lucknow as well, because last year they sometimes played with several overseas openers. De Kock didn't really play much, but Kyle Mayers played a lot. I would say probably my take would be Mayers' stock has dropped a little bit since then. So picking up a domestic opener might allow them to restructure a little bit with their overseas.
Mayers was cheap
players.
as well, right? He was cheap, so it's kind of like one of those things.
Yeah. So for me, I think that it benefits both players. It benefits both franchises, and I guess that's the art of the deal, right? Completely different to the Mumbai trades, which only benefit one party. But I think both teams, you can say, okay, well, fair enough here.
Yeah, I think there's a bit more of a ceiling. I think Devdutt Padikkal's got a little bit more to give. They've not exactly traded him for
100%.
Manish Pandey, have they? So it's all okay. There were some other big things that were announced. Obviously, Ben Stokes isn't going to be playing for CSK. That's not really a surprise to anybody. He's taken that sweet kashish and moved on for his next merry-go-round, where he probably won't go in the mega auction. He'll probably sit out another one and then go for the next one and get another, 15 crore or whatever. Jofra Archer is missing out altogether, which does free up some of the money for Mumbai to have some pots to play with. And then you've got Rovman Powell, Riley Russo,
Harry Brook.
Harry Brook's gone, hasn't he, Max? You're a Sunrisers sympathiser. Good or bad decision?
That makes me sound like more of an apologist than a sympathiser. It's like saying you're a.
Do you think that's a good decision? I know Harry Brook was.
Yeah, I mean,
quite expensive.
I can see it. I can see why they've done it, because he was expensive. He struggled against spin. They tried to sort of help him out. They moved him up the order, but that was sort of at the expense of everything else they wanted to do. They'd got in Mike Agarwal, and that kind of messed that whole thing up. And they've got quite a few overseas middle order players. They've got Markram, they've got Glenn Phillips, they've got Heinrich Klaassen. And so do you want? Was it 13 crore that Harry Brook was?
Yeah, 5 crore.
Do you want 13 crore sitting on your books that's possibly not going to, or at least not a banker, to do a better job than those guys? So I think it gives them, maybe he'd go on, and knowing SRH, actually, he will go to someone for less money and be unbelievable and win the IPL final with 100. That's got SRH all over it. But in terms of
Mumbai base price.
But I mean, in terms of what they can do, what they need to do, everything else that's wrong with their team, I think it makes sense to shift him, take a chance at the auction to get something and fill in, try and sort out the other issues that they've got, which are numerous based on their performance last year. But sort of the middle order, they've got a fair stock of players, so it does actually make sense to me for once in terms of something that Sunrisers have done.
I think ultimately as well, unless Brook has an amazing series in West Indies, which in the next few weeks, which kind of could throw recency bias a little bit into the debate, there would essentially have been retaining a player for 13.25 crore who realistically now has probably got a stock value of 3 or 4. So it doesn't really make a great deal of sense. The original purchase didn't really make a lot of sense. As Max said, they already had some other options in the middle order as well, and not just that, but the fact that it was grossly overpriced for a player who doesn't bowl, a middle order or top or middle order batter who doesn't bowl. So yeah, it's hype, it's recency bias. It was.
Well, actually, no, I do have to take issue with that, Dan. Sorry to jump in, but he does bowl, and we love it.
Okay. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. One player we haven't touched on a little bit was the Lord getting released as well.
Well, it was hard to notice with the other 11 that went.
Well, yeah, KKR have got to do a lot of heavy lifting at this auction.
Did they forget that it was mega auction next year?
Maybe, but they did retain Jason Roy, which was a little bit curious.
I think that's one of the first signs. I think, Dan, actually, what we're seeing there is the franchise thing coming in. So the global franchise, like kind of multi-franchise ownership, and actually making a decision based upon that rather than anything else. Jason Roy is a good player, right? But is he really someone you want to be retaining, kind of at the price that he's there? Maybe not. But
he's pretty safe from England now, isn't he?
there's going to be 30, 40, 50 overseas top order batters in the auction. I mean, like this is the most plentiful supply as it gets. So I just don't really understand the point of retaining a player who I think the greatest one in the world probably is not at peak anymore. I mean, I saw him bat against Fazal Faruqi in the T10 the other day, and I mean, it was pretty sad. And by the same token, someone else who has had a poor T10 so far is Andre Russell, who they retained at 12 crore with over 11 economy rate last season, struggling with his fitness, and really now looking like he is a little bit less explosive with the bat as well. So it'd be interesting to see how that decision plays out too.
We'll like I said, we'll do a full show on this, giving you our insight into each team's chances before the auction. We're going to take a break now, though, and then we'll come back with a short part 3 where we round off any other business. Cricket news. Makes a return as a segment.